be able to do their work to protect public health and work towards clean air by regulating pollution across the region. So we stand with the Air District in opposing this harmful bill, and we hope to continue dialogue with the author's office and the legislators to help them appreciate and understand just the role that this agency plays and the importance of having leaders such as yourselves at the helm of creating common sense policies that are informed by all stakeholders and that decisions that do not result in eroding the district's authority and ability to regulate for air quality and ensure that we don't have a situation where these fundamental rights, these fundamental obligations by the agency are not bargained away, and that we continue to have a place to go to ensure that the public's protected from harmful pollution. Thank you.
Thank you. I see we're having a lot of people raise your hands. I'm going to cut off public comment after the next speaker, and I'm going to reduce the time to 2 minutes. We have a very extensive committee agenda, so we'll limit public comment from now on to 2 minutes. Go on, Fernando Marquez Duarte. Welcome, Fernando.
Good morning,
Good morning.
board members. Can you hear me?
Fernando, we can barely hear you.
Let me change this. Is this better?
A little better.
Okay. Good morning, board members. Fernando Marquez Duarte with PSH. And just wanted to make echo of what my colleague Fernando said. We remain opposed to SB 34, and we appreciate the district's effort to keep opposing this bill, because as we all know, it will take away the regulatory authority from the district that we need to reduce polluting emissions in the South Coast Basin. And we also consider that this bill didn't really consider the public in the process. The public comments were not really considered in the hearing. The legislator that sponsored this bill wasn't really responsive to the comments, and we keep asking the AQMD to keep opposing this bill and keep working for polluting emissions regulations. Thank you.
Thank you, Fernando. So public comment is now cut off at Harvey Etter. Our next speaker is Thurl. Thurl, good to see your hand up.
I'm there. Can you hear me?
Sure can, loud and clear.
Thank you. My name is Daryl Golden. I live in West Long Beach and a member of West Long Beach Association. And I opposed SB 34. It is bad politics for a number of reasons. And the most significant thing is that the examples that were given at the hearings by the author of the bill were extremely misleading. If not, it could be characterized as something else, but I'm gonna say misleading. And I just like the public safety should be first in everybody's mind. And you guys on this particular issue, I have to clap and do everything for you guys because you right there trying to do that and defend the public. And that's the purpose of the organization. And I want to thank staff and everyone who's participated so far in this, and that you stay with it till the end, because I don't even think that bill should have even been introduced as any type of legislation, something that's going to directly impact this community I live in and others around the port negatively. It has no purpose but to negatively affect the health and welfare of this community. And I want to thank you. I'm done.
Thanks, Thurl. And our final speaker on this item is Harvey Etter. Welcome, Harvey.
Hello, am I being heard?
Yes. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning. Good morning, my name is Harvey, and I'm speaking for myself and public say coalition, etc. And as Fernando complimented you all on reaching out to stakeholders, we were not contacted, and we would like to be contacted and participate in this. We're concerned about this. Anyway, so that's also Ranji George, who ran the electric vehicles and whatnot for 20, 30 years with the district, did a shout out to us and told us to get involved with a big area. It's the ports. So as with that as well. That's it for right now. I want to reserve time. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Harvey. That concludes public comment. I don't see anybody in the auditorium. Wayne, did you see anybody here? No one? Okay.
No.
Thank you. Let's move on. Item number 2. That's overview of federal legislation. Lisa Tanaka, Deputy Executive Officer, Legislative, Public Affairs Media. Lisa, go ahead.
Good morning, Chair, members of the committee. Next slide, please. This morning, we'll have a presentation by all 3 of our federal consulting firms, and we'll be covering the congressional calendar, the budget reconciliation bill, rescissions and fiscal year 2026 appropriations, as well as some key legislative issues, including the Surface Transportation Reauthorization and the Clean Air Act. Next slide, please. So I'm going to sort of set the stage here for the 2025 and 2026 congressional calendar. Right now, we're running out of time. There are 16 days left before the end of the fiscal year and 46 days left total in the whole session before the end of the year. That being said, Congress is in recess and are expected to come back around September 2nd. When they come back, they'll need to quickly take up the fiscal year 26 appropriations bills. They're pretty far apart on the House and Senate, a lot of work yet to be done. Later in this presentation, you'll hear more detail from Mark Kadish on the prospects of those bills, but September 30th is a deadline coming up. And then the end of session is supposed to be around December 18th or 19th. So not a lot of time left, a lot of, key things that have to get done. Looking into 2026, it will be a midterm election year, and that always means that the members rather be in their districts than in DC. So we will see a very compressed session. They'll want to end session likely in early summer, and they'll be out of session for all of August and then October. So not a lot of legislative working days in 2026. A lot of partisanship will come up in a midterm election year, in addition to the tensions already happening. Some of those things affecting it are like the redistricting issues and all of the different types of administrative actions. So it's like a pressure cooker right now in DC, if you will. And so that sort of sets the stage for the discussion on each of these critical federal bills and issues that our consultants are going to present on. So I'd like to introduce Gary Hoitzma from Carmen Group, and he's going to begin us with an overview of the budget reconciliation bill. So Gary, next slide, please.
Thank you, Lisa. One of the things, as you mentioned, that we're watching very closely here in Washington is the budget reconciliation legislative process. Now, what is that? What is reconciliation? Why is it important? Let's take a quick look at that. This is a powerful procedural tool that's established in law that is only used when the majority party has the trifecta. In other words, when the majority party controls the House, the Senate, and the White House all at the same time, reconciliation comes into play. And that's where we are right now. It's important because it allows the majority to enact its tax and spend agenda in an expedited manner without the Senate filibuster. So it can be enacted through the Senate on 51 votes instead of the usual 60 votes. So examples of this, of course, are the President Trump's big, beautiful bill that was just passed on July 4th. And prior to that, in the Biden administration, the Inflation Reduction Act was a reconciliation bill that passed through with no Republican votes, all on a party line vote. So here we are. The process around reconciliation has special rules and constraints and things. It's a little bit complicated, but essentially it means only spending, revenue, and debt limit provisions are allowed to be in reconciliation. And when there are disputes over what's in or out, the Senate parliamentarian is there to make decisions on what's in or out. The process starts with a passage of a budget resolution in both the House and the Senate. Now, that's not easy to do. It took the Republicans several weeks, months to get budget resolutions passed in the House and Senate. There's just this last time around. But when it is done, it gives instructions to the committees, the relevant committees, to draft law changes that essentially reconcile current law with the future budget blueprint. So that's why it's called reconciliation. And then when that's done, all the committee pieces are pulled together into one big package. And this is exactly what has happened. Now, if we move to the next slide, we'll see that President Trump called his reconciliation bill the one big beautiful bill. And essentially, the provisions of that bill had to do with the extension of the 2017 Trump tax cuts, the major spending cuts in Medicaid and food stamps, major spending increases in defense, in border, in energy. It raised the debt limit by $5 trillion. And it repealed or cut back major provisions of the Inflation Reduction Act from some years before. And one of the things that we especially were attuned to during this whole process was to protect the Invest Clean grant that South Coast had received through the Inflation Reduction Act. And we didn't want to see anything repealed or rescinded from that. And so our team here in Washington was very active in communicating with our federal delegation about the importance of this to us. And in the end, this Invest Clean grant was not impacted by the Trump bill. The Trump bill did rescind certain unobligated grant money, but the Invest Clean grant was fully obligated through an executed agreement with the EPA. And the parliamentarian had also made some decisions that were very favorable in that regard to what we're doing. So in addition, the Trump bill on issues that we were most concerned about, it revoked tax credits for zero emission medium and heavy duty vehicles. It phased out the electric hydrogen charging fueling infrastructure tax credit in 2026 rather than 2032. And it essentially gutted the CAFE fuel efficiency standards by eliminating civil penalties for noncompliance. So these are some of the things we're watching. Now, so the question now is, what's next? After this big bill has been done, there's talk in Washington right now of possibly having as many as two more reconciliation bills, one later this year and one early next year. But it's very dicey right now. I personally don't feel that the Republicans are going to have the unity needed to get this done, but it is possible, and it's something we're going to have to be watching to see. I know that there are staff meetings right now, even in the August break on the Hill, where they're describing certain things that could be in a new reconciliation bill, but we're watching it closely, and we'll be continuing to stay attuned to it as things go forward. So that's my presentation on the reconciliation bill. I'm happy now to turn things over to Mark Kadish to give us an update on rescissions and appropriations. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Gary, and good morning, everyone. I'm going to spend, as Gary said, a few minutes talking about the appropriations process and its impact on South Coast. But before I do, I apologize, but I have to digress a little bit and talk about some obscure budget issues like rescission and what it means to us and why it's complicating the appropriations process. And like Gary, I'm going to do a little history on some congressional procedure. About 50 years ago, a little more than 50 years ago, Congress passed the Impoundment Control Act in 1974 as part of the Budget Act. And the reason they did is at that time, President Nixon was withholding funds that Congress had appropriated, and Congress, trying to preserve the power of the purse, said, you can't do that. We're going to set up a process, which the administration agreed to, that will restrict how you can hold up funds or withhold funds that we appropriate. And that requires the president to submit a list of things that he or she would like to cut, and Congress has to act on those within 45 days. And if they don't, the funds must be spent. So that's it's important. It's also important to know that until June of this year, where $9 billion was cut from Corporation for Public Broadcasting and PR and foreign aid, rescissions really haven't been used since the 1990s, and were usually done on a bipartisan basis. So I think the first thing to point out is that this has complicated immensely the appropriations negotiations. We normally fight over levels of spending, and there's often fights between the House and Senate. It's often partisan, but it's often bicameral. The Senate has often wanted to spend more and the House less, so it's difficult to do bills. It is important to note that in the rescission package, as Gary pointed out, reconciliation did not impact Invest Clean. Neither did the last round of rescissions. However, what we have to keep in mind is that, like they're talking about doing other reconciliation bills, the administration is also talking about doing additional rescission bills. Why is that important? Well, rescission, to pass appropriations bills in the Senate, you really need 60 votes. And you have 53 Republican votes, 47 caucus with the Democrats. So you need bipartisan support to pass appropriations bills. However, you only need 50 votes or 51 to cut spending. And as the Minority Leader Chuck Schumer has pointed out, it doesn't seem like much of a negotiation that Congress agrees to spending on both parties, and then one of the parties on a 50-vote majority can cut it out. So that's complicated matters and negotiations over our appropriations bills. The second, maybe even more complicating factor is the director of OMB, Russ Vought, has said publicly that he doesn't believe that the Impoundment Control Act is constitutional. Therefore, he doesn't have to abide by it. He also has argued that they can do what's known as a pocket rescission. A pocket rescission essentially is you send a rescissions package near the end of the fiscal year, and Congress won't then have 45 days. They don't have to do anything, and the rescissions will go into effect. GAO, which under the law has that responsibility for determining the legality, has said that's not legal, but the OMB director has argued that the Impoundment Control Act was unconstitutional. So that is a major thorn in negotiations and will have some effect on us or on the appropriations process. Next slide, please. So before I talk about the overall appropriations process, I just want to point out a couple of the key issues that we have been pushing for and working with our delegation on for years, TAG, DERA, and 103, 105, as you can see, have all at least grown or largely held steady in this environment, which we feel good about. Part of that is South Coast work with our delegation. We have a lot of champions that have helped us on this. On appropriations, we work closely with Ken Calvert, with Pete Aguilar, with Norma Torres, and recently with Mike Levin, who's been put on the Appropriations Committee, as well as our senators. TAG in particular has grown over the last 10 years, more than double. And we've done very well, we think, also with DERA and holding steady on 103, 105. So those are the issues that we're following most closely. Next slide, please. This year, as the negotiations go on, and I should tell you that of the 12 appropriations bills, the House currently has passed 2 of them. The Senate has passed 3. None have gone to conference, so none have been signed into law. The 3 that we're following most closely are the Interior, Transportation, and Energy and Water bills. And the good news again is that none of these bills are coming after our Invest Clean, although we're continuing to watch. None of the rescissions so far have gone after them, as I mentioned. But because there are so few days left, I think Lisa pointed out there are only 16 days left in the fiscal year. It seems that it's going to be very difficult to reach agreement on these bills in the time remaining. So we'll do what's known as a continuing resolution. Continuing resolution funds the government and programs at last year's levels. That's not the worst outcome necessarily for us, although as you can see, with targeted airshed grants, 103, 105, and DERA, our numbers aren't bad. And in fact, given the cuts interior to EPA generally, we're actually quite satisfied that these weren't gone after for deeper cuts. So it's very hard to predict what's going to happen over the next 16 days or through the rest of the session, through the rest of the year, because we don't know whether another rescissions package will be sent up. We don't know how the administration is going to negotiate on these appropriations bills. We think we are in good shape with some of the issues that we care deeply about, but it's very likely, I would say, that we could either be rushing to a continuing resolution for a long period of time, or potentially even government shutdown come October 1st. It's just very hard to predict. So I know that's not satisfying, but it is unfortunately the position we're in at the moment. There's a lot of uncertainty here. But I think I'll conclude there and maybe turn it over to Leo to talk about some of the other issues that South Coast is following.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Gary. Next slide. Thank you. Good morning, board. It's a pleasure to be here with you all today to talk a little bit about the surface transportation reauthorization, possibly the only big bipartisan package that might move this Congress. As Gary and Mark have pointed out, so far, 8 months into the year, we've been in a very partisan track focused on reconciliation, which is a simple majority, rescissions, which is a simple majority, with the trifecta of Republicans controlling everything. Surface reauthorization has traditionally been a bipartisan bill and likely to require 60 votes in the Senate, which will require a good amount of bipartisanship. The surface transportation reauthorization is a bill that's done about every 5 years, plus or minus a year, where you can do some sort of continuing resolution stopgap measure. But it sets the discretionary spending for most of our nation's transportation and infrastructure programs, both formula allocation funding for the highway system and discretionary grant programs like Tiger and Build, as well as other transportation and infrastructure programs like PIDP and Merit and other programs that are of importance to AQMD. The last Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act was about $1.2 trillion over 5 years, focused on a wide range of infrastructure. Democrats like to take a longer view of infrastructure to include, as the graph will show, roads, bridges, public transit, EVs, safety, ports, clean energy, water, other funds. Republicans, when they're in control, like to take a smaller, more traditional infrastructure, more roads and bridges and mega projects approach. So considering they control the House, Senate, and White House, We anticipate this bill to be about half the size, probably closer to 550 million, but the dynamics there still present an opportunity to push for issues important to AQMD in the ports and goods movement arena in particular. You have good representation on the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee with Robert Garcia and Lauren Friedman. Senators Padilla and Schiff are both on the Environment and Public Works Committee that will take the pen on the Senate side in drafting the bill. Senator Whitehouse, who's the ranking member on the Democratic side from Rhode Island, also has a keen interest in getting this bill done because he's expected to move next Congress to the Senate Judiciary Committee. So this is about a legacy building opportunity for him. And being from Rhode Island, he has a special interest in ports and waterways, which are of importance to South Coast. This bill we expect again to be about 550 billion, but Senator Whitehouse has also kind of indicated that this might be the only opportunity to address climate bills, as he's a big climate champion. And because Republicans need Democrats to pass this bill, there's an opportunity for him to insert provisions that favor climate-related provisions and that Republicans would accept in the goods movement and ports to plains corridors area specifically. Next slide. So unfortunately, the bipartisanship tends to end a little bit there. When we start looking at Clean Air Act, as Lisa pointed out, there's only 46 days left in the session. So the ability to craft a big bipartisan compromise, again, because any amendments to the Clean Air Act are likely to require 60 votes to pass in the Senate. We're probably going to run out of time this Congress. There have been a variety of bills introduced to try to make changes to the Clean Air Act to modify it. Anything on focusing for cleaner airspaces or programs to help mitigate air after wildfire, wildland smoke events, addressing tailpipe emissions, clarifying the definitions and modifications of stationary sources. There's a number of bills that have been introduced, unfortunately, not have gotten significant bipartisan support enough to kind of create a breakthrough of 60 votes in the Senate. I think Democrats here are a little bit hesitant to engage on conversations given the administration has been doing a lot of executive actions on NEPA and other environmental regulations. So they're trying to understand if they engage on modifying the Clean Air Act, how is this administration going to interpret those changes? And is there a risk of backsliding or ceding control to an executive that has been pretty blunt about using executive authority and disregarding congressional safeguards? So there's a little bit of hesitation to engage on and negotiate. But maybe that will change as we go into the fall. Although I would consider that like probably to be a little bit unlikely. But we are monitoring the issue and looking for opportunities that would allow South Coast to continue to defend their local authority, advocate for cooperative federalism, and for the federal responsibility of emission sources, and other provisions that would be important as we look to update the Clean Air Act. South Coast is well positioned to capture any movement on this issue because they have members, again, senators, both senators sit on the Environment and Public Works Committee that have the primary jurisdiction on this issue in the Senate, and have good members on the House Energy and Commerce Committee with Raul Ruiz, Nene Barragan, and Jay Obernolte sitting on the committee that would have the pen on the House side. With that, I'm going to turn it over back to Lisa to review a little bit of South Coast AQMD priorities and then take questions at the end. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you, Leo. So in summary, our South Coast AQMD priorities continue to be preserving our nearly $500 million Invest Clean grant, whether it's rescissions, reconciliation, or appropriations, or any other vehicle or administrative action. We're out advocating to protect those funds. On appropriations, we'll continue to support our key accounts, targeted airshed grants, the Diesel Emission Reduction Act grants, as well as the funding 103, 105, which supports a large part of our monitoring, planning, outreach, many of our activities here at the district. And thankfully, due to our advocacy and our strong advocates like Ken Calvert and Aguilar and Norma Torres and now Mike Levin and our senators, those accounts have stayed either consistent or increased, even through tough budget years and through the first Trump administration. Knock on wood, those accounts have been pretty good. And then looking forward towards surface transportation reauthorization, we will advocate for goods movement related programs such as charging and fueling infrastructure, which has sort of been targeted by this administration, and other programs that shipbuilding and ports are priority for this administration. So that could be helpful for us. And in terms of the Clean Air Act, we will continue to stay engaged with the committee so that if something should move, we are working with our delegation members on Energy and Commerce and EPW and making sure that our key issues are known and we advocate strongly. We are working on a trip to DC and hopefully this fall to continue that work. And that concludes our presentation, and all of the firms are online and happy to take questions.
Thank you, Lisa. I'll open it for questions from committee members. Supervisor Hagman?
No, I just want to say we had the opportunity to host Congressman David Rouser on Tuesday, who's the chair of the Reauthorization Act for the surface transportation. So he came out and visited San Bernardino County, and we hosted him. So we suggested a few things. I'll work with Wayne and his team to advocate for a few other ones, especially the ports.
Thanks, Supervisor. Mayor, Vice Mayor, comments, questions? Okay, is there any public comment on this item? If you want to comment publicly, please raise your hand. Item number 2, overview of current federal legislation. Give you a few seconds there. Nobody in the auditorium and nobody online has raised their hand for item number 2. Good. We'll move to item number, there's really no item number 3 on the agenda. Wayne?
That's correct. They should have been combined and corrected, but unfortunately.
I figured
didn't
that's
catch
what I
it.
thought.
Yeah.
It's okay. Then we'll move to item number 4, update discussions on state legislative issues. Ross Buckley, go ahead, Ross.
Good morning, Chair and board members. I want to report that at the end of July, the California Air Resources Board released the Community Air Protection Program Annual Progress Report. The report stated that local air districts, community members, CARB, and other local partners have significantly reduced air emissions in some of the California's most disproportionately affected communities through the AB 617 program. The report touted a lot of the good work that South Coast has done via rulemaking, some mobile monitoring efforts. The most important part, or potentially one of the most important parts of this piece, was that the governor on July 25th put a press release touting this good work that's been being done in the 617 communities, and specifically mentioned that this is a critical piece moving forward as they look to extend cap and trade reauthorization. So it seemed like a positive sign in the fight for continued money for the 617 program. That completes my verbal report.
Thanks, Ross. We'll go next.
Well, good morning, Mr. Chair and committee members. Good to be with you this morning. I did want to provide the committee with a brief update around the 2026 governor's race. About a week ago, former Vice President Kamala Harris announced that she will not run for governor in 2026. And late last night, Lieutenant Governor Eleni Kounakis announced that she will not run for governor either, and she will instead run for state treasurer in 2026. Even with those two dropouts, the race for governor is still crowded with a lot of big names like Congressmember Katie Porter, former Assembly Speaker and LA Mayor Antonio Villaraigosa, former Attorney General and President Biden cabinet member Javier Becerra, former Senate President Pro Tem Tony Atkins, State Superintendent of Public Construction Tony Thurmond, former State Controller Betty Yee, and billionaire Stephen Klobeck as well. So very crowded Democratic field. On the Republican side, there are only two candidates, Riverside County Sheriff Chad Bianco and political commentator Steve Hilton. So we expect to see some more changes over the next few months, especially with former vice president dropping out and the lieutenant governor dropping out. And it's anybody's race at this point, so we'll continue to keep you updated as the polls continue and we get to learn more about the political landscape of the 2026 governor's race. So that concludes my report, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks, Paul. We'll come back in a moment. And finally, David Quintana. Mr. Quintana.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. I'll be very, very quick. Just going to give you a real heads up on the calendar as we come back in. Currently, we're on break. We return on August 18th. Going to be a little slow between August 18th and August 28th. On August 28th, they announce which bills will be released from appropriations. That's the fiscal deadline. And then they will take off for Labor Day, Labor Day on September 1st. When they return the next day, it is full floor session until adjournment on September 12th. So I just wanted to lay that out so you have a kind of a picture as we go into this final month.
Thank you, David. Do we have any questions for staff, our consultants? None from supervisor here, mayor, vice mayor? None right now. I just have a question. I think it might go to Ross or one of you. I noticed in your report, it indicated additional budget provisions on the budget may include, there's that $1 million for South Coast AQMD to deploy mobile air monitoring systems. How's that going? Is that going to be put in the budget or is that just being talked about?
Yeah, I'm happy to take this one and then defer to staff. So this is part of some of the conversations around AB 98, the warehouse bill from last year. There were some provisions that required South Coast to do some monitoring in those counties. And so this is the follow-up appropriation for some of those monitoring efforts.
Wasn't there, I think, $48 million in the account from the WARE program? I think that may be on the admin committee today.
Those are separate accounts.
Okay.
So the WARE program was developed from fees that have been paid into that program.
Mitigation fees?
Yeah. There may be other sources. We had to do a differentiation based on the time period because the previous legislation said that a certain amount of fees generated after it was, I believe, the start of this year had to be separate and go back to the community. So we have separate accounts for the WARE program. But what Ross is talking about was, as part of new legislation, it had included that the South Coast AQMD conduct a study. This second round to go back to the author was to make sure that we actually got funding to do the study. So that 1 million was designed in part to help us do that. It will also dictate the scope of the study, given that it's only $1 million.
When will it include new equipment or just fund staff or both? What will it?
It should do both, but I'm looking to Lisa to make sure that I'm correct.
Sorry. So we were working with Senator Reyes's office to design that scope of the study. So planning and roles as well as monitoring and analysis division. And they're looking, I think, to do a combination of using existing monitoring data because with AB 617, there was significant monitoring, I believe, done already and developing a model and potentially an online tool that folks could maybe type in some data and get some information on air quality impacts.
Okay. It was interesting as we're looking at AB 1106, the incident command, kind of beefing that up. And then this bill, there's a little, maybe small relations, but maybe not. So thanks. Vice Mayor, Mayor, Supervisor, any questions? Is there any public comment in the auditorium? I see none. Any online? I see none. Go back to the agenda. That looks like it. Let's see. So we've got other matters. Any other business? Committee members or staff? See nobody raising your hand. This is item number 6, public comment period for items that were not on the agenda, but under our jurisdiction? Anybody in the auditorium? I see no one. Would anybody online like to testify? Public comment, I've got one. You got 2 minutes, Harvey. Go ahead, please.
Hello, am I being heard?
Yes.
Yes. My name is Harvey Eder. I'm speaking for myself. Public Solar Power Coalition and like-minded folks and entities. I want to incorporate by reference a 140-page advisory decision made in The Hague last week, 10 days ago, about climate change and threats to violation of human rights internationally, and that countries that violate these rights can be litigated against by folks like us, and that's what we intend to do, and that there can be solutions for this as well as part of that. So this is significant, and we're giving notice also within the next couple of weeks. We're going to be giving notice to go to court to legislate on to try to head off the federal implementation plan. You've been hiding what's happening with the state implementation plan. We've been trying to talk for
Thank you, Mr.
4
Eder, but
years with the new
these comments do not
Pardon?
relate to this committee's jurisdiction, so we can move on. Thank you.
Thank you, Harvey. That concludes public comment. And our final item is the next meeting date is Friday, September 12th, 2025 at 9 a.m. And without any other hands raised, I will adjourn the meeting. Thanks everyone for attending. Vice Mayor, Mayor, Kurt, take care, staff, great work, consultants.